Hi everybody, this is Dr. Tina Fields coming to you live from the Paramita campus offices. Note the beautiful rocks and the water, and my office is right over there. So whenever you come next, you can please pop in and visit me. I thought it would be more fun to have actual video portions of a lecture rather than having to read it all. This is my very first attempt at doing this sort of thing. I hope it works. All of this is a work in progress, eh what? So here goes. So you just read the part about the definition of ecopsychology and got to that portion where John C. explains it as knowing that Earth is home to the soul. Oikos, psyche, logos, knowing that Earth is home to the soul. Which certainly gets at the heart of what I love about it. And then we're going to move on to Theodore Roszak, who coined the term of ecopsychology, and his idea of ecology needs psychology, psychology needs ecology. What does he mean by that? Let's start with psychology needs ecology. I have notes here in front of me, but I can't see them through these glasses, so I'm going to put on my ugly ones. There it is. We're going to get into the history of psychology next time and the time after that, but basically just know that psychology as it stands in the West has been about the individual without a context of realization that we have co-evolved as a species with this entire matrix of life on the planet. Traditional psychology has been seen as an encapsulated ego, the isolated, autonomous individual self. These are deeply held assumptions that are not held by people all over the planet. It's uniquely Western. We'll look into this more in a couple of weeks as well. Just know that, okay, if you're a person and you read the paper, and you go into despair because you realize these terrible things are happening in the world. And you go to a psychiatrist. You say, God, I'm reading the paper and it's terrible. I just don't know how I can go on. I don't know why I should even bother going to work. What does anything matter? Well, the traditional psychiatrist is going to look at that and say, tell me about your relationship with your mother. And of course, the point is you're trying! But they don't get that. And so in ecopsychology, the point would be to say, that is so very sane of you, to be brave enough to be open to these things, allow yourself to feel the deep pain of the world as yourself, to recognize yourself as the world, in fact. I mean, any person who was in a burning building who wasn't freaking out would be considered insane. And it's the same kind of situation. This recognition is a sign of deep sanity and health. And so expanding psychology to include this matrix is absolutely vital, purely in those terms, moving the definition of the self from the individual to the ecological. Defining this definition of self and family and relatives, relationships, to include the more than human world. I should have started with some earlier stuff I wanted to tell you. Maybe I'll tack it in. When we began with psychology, we had Mr. Freud. Mr. Freud who said, hey, this amazing realization, if I just look into the past, I can figure out the root of my current problems. And in fact, if I look at it deeply enough, that might even heal it. Once I understand it, that might heal it. This was revolutionary. Freud was a revolutionary. Whether or not you like him or not, you have to recognize that. He also did pretty new groundbreaking work with cocaine. He was a wild guy. And people criticize him for many reasonable things. For example, he never really understood women, so the whole thing about penis envy, But he admitted it. He grew up in the Victorian era. I mean, it was a time when you couldn't even talk about piano's legs. You had to cover their limbs. And so you got to cut the man some slack. We have to cut everybody some slack due to the cultural context that they come out of. Anyway, there he was. this revolutionary idea, but it was all about the me. Then here comes Jung, his protege, who says, Mr. Freud, Herr Freud, I think you've missed something. I mean, and he had these amazing experiences with God, with the numinous, and so he wanted to bring that in. Great expansion. And then you move forward yet, and you've got the humanists, and then the feminists who added, I'm going fast, who added family dynamics, who said, you know, maybe if you're seeing something going on with a person, maybe their acting crazy isn't even really them. But they're not nuts. What they're doing is they're the strong one, and it's a rational survival response to an untenable situation. Or maybe they're even being the voice of the group, showing the energy of what's going on of the group or the family when nobody else there is brave enough or strong enough or sensitive enough to do that. So then ecopsychology comes along and says, hey, maybe the family isn't just human. Maybe the family also includes the rest of the beings here. The animals, the plants, the air, the situation we're in, and so the elements, right? The place. And so rocks. When we then read the paper and find out that our family is in trouble, you start to understand why this is the same reaction. If our mother was harmed, it would be sociopathological not to be upset. And yet, loss of childhood trees, for example, clear-cutting. These things are just taken for granted, just like taking of Indian lands or Negro slaves' children. We now kill or displace non-humans without a thought. We just call it development, right? We sell lands to one another without a thought for the beings who were previously there. It's continued perpetration of unconscious colonization by privileged oppressors. Okay, end of rant about that. Anyway, you go to the psychiatrist with depression or anger. What if it's real? What if the real problem is the denial of those things? And the ill one who's coming with these problems is simply more aware and open and sensitive to what's up. In other words, they're exhibiting a healthy animal response to danger. This is not something to be medicated away. Joanna Macy put this very beautifully. We are living cells in the living body of Earth. Our collective body is in trauma, and we're experiencing that. Even though we try to suppress it, or drown it, or cut a nerve so we don't feel it, the collective plight exists at some level of our consciousness. We need to listen to ourselves as if we were listening to a message from the universe. There is no private salvation. So that's psychology needs ecology. We have to recognize our deep interbeing if we're going to ever achieve individual and collective sanity and survival, by the way. Okay, the other side, ecology needs psychology. Did I say that wrong? That was psychology needs ecology. This is ecology needs psychology. Basically, here we are trying to make change, a lot of us as environmental activists, and if you look at it, okay, look at the messages that have been coming out of the environmental movement. What do you usually get? Stop and think about this for a moment. What are the messages you usually get? I wish I had you live right now, so you could be calling them out. It's really fun. Like, how can you drive that thing? Don't you know you're killing the world? Or, we're all gonna die. Or, you really shouldn't be doing that, you know. Every time you turn on a light switch, you're causing torment. Right and left, you're causing clear cutting to happen, and you're causing coal mining to happen, and anyway, you know how it is. The tactics of guilt or fear or anger, the reasonable anger that comes up when people start to realize things like the Pacific garbage patch. But environmental activists have not traditionally drawn upon what we know about actual human behavior change. You know, these tactics don't usually make one want to move toward the person giving the speech. You don't want to say, oh yeah, I want to feel more guilty. Not usually. So what we usually move toward, obviously, is love. So if we play on what people love, in fact, bring them into deeper relationships so that they will have their own connection with these places, with these beings, then they're going to want to save it. Then when you point out how their actions are tied to either creating more health or less health, then they're going to want to go for it. And when something turns from an oppressive you should to an absolute choice, it's much more delicious. You kind of want to. And then also, if you experience the world as an extension of yourself or your family, these are two basic models for the ecological self, which we'll get into more later, then it just becomes a matter of enlightened self-interest. I mean, why on earth would you go around harming yourself if you have the choice? Of course you want to be happy, you want to be healthy, and by proxy you want your entire full self to be healthy. You don't say, hey, I'm going to take care of my liver, what the hell with the pancreas, right? It's like I can't say I'm going to take care of the me that I recognize because it's bounded by my skin and not take care of the air that I am breathing in. That is the same air, by the way, that has been in the lungs of the dinosaurs. The same air that will be in the lungs, inshallah, of generations, thousands of years in the future. And the same air that goes into your lungs now. It might take a while, but there it is. It's a closed system, and I am breathing in your air, and you are breathing out my air. And I send you my greetings, my sisters and brothers. I'm glad we're on this journey together. One last moment of more glamour. Bye for now.